They see only what is immediately visible to the eye. Everything we get outside of the free gifts of nature must in some way be paid for. Economics is haunted by more fallacies than any other study known to man. To see the problem as a whole and not in fragments, that is the goal of economic science. We cannot distribute more wealth than is created. We cannot, in the long run, pay labour as a whole more than it produces. What is saved on consumers' goods is spent on capital goods. The borrowing must someday be repaid. The government cannot keep piling up debt indefinitely, for if it tries, it will someday become bankrupt. Deficit spending, once embarked upon, creates powerful vested interests which demand its continuance under all conditions. Almost the whole wealth of the modern world, nearly everything that distinguishes it from the pre-industrial world of the 17th century, consists of its accumulated capital. What is harmful or disastrous to an individual must be equally harmful or disastrous to the collection of individuals that make up a nation. There is a real promise that public policy may be reversed before the damage from existing measures and trends has become irreparable. It is true that the United States has been losing its world economic leadership in recent years, but because of our own anti-capitalist governmental policies, not because of economic maturity. The indignation shown by many people today at the mention of the very word profits indicates how little understanding there is of the vital function that profits play in our economy. If money is kept either in savings banks or commercial banks, as we have already seen, the banks are eager to lend and invest it. They cannot afford to have idle funds. There is no more certain way to deter employment than to harass and penalize employers. There is no more certain way to keep wages low than to destroy every incentive to invest in new and more efficient machines and equipment. We may take as the outstanding example inflation. This is not only a policy imposed for its own sake, but an inevitable result of most of the other interventionist policies. It stands today as the universal symbol of government intervention everywhere. Fallacies, when they have reached the popular stage, become anonymous anyway. The subtleties or obscurities to be found in the authors most responsible for propagating them are washed off. A doctrine becomes simplified. The sophism that may have been buried in a network of qualifications, ambiguities, or mathematical equations stands clear. If money that would previously have been used for savings were thrown into the purchase of consumers' goods, it would not increase employment, but merely lead to an increase in the price of consumption goods and to a decrease in the price of capital goods. More and more people are becoming aware that government has nothing to give them without first taking it away from somebody else or from themselves. Increased handouts to selected groups mean merely increased taxes or increased deficits and increased inflation. And inflation, in the end, misdirects and disorganizes production. There will not be a quote-unquote surplus of capital until the most backward country is a well-equipped technologically as the most advanced until the most inefficient factory in America is brought abreast of the factory with the latest and most elaborate equipment, and until the most modern tools of production have reached a point where human ingenuity is at a dead end and can improve them no further. As long as any of these conditions remain unfulfilled, there will be indefinite room for more capital. In sum, so far as the politicians are concerned, the lesson that this book tried to instill more than 30 years ago does not seem to have been learned anywhere. If we go through the chapters of this book, Seriatim, we find particularly no form of government intervention deprecated in the first edition that is not still being pursued, usually with increased obstinacy. Governments everywhere are still trying to cure by public works the unemployment brought about by their own policies. They are imposing heavier and more expropriatory taxes than ever. They still recommend credit expansion. Most of them still make full employment their overriding goal. They continue to impose import quotas and protective tariffs. They try to increase exports by depreciating their currencies even further. Farmers are still striking for parity prices. Governments still provide special encouragements to unprofitable industries. They still make efforts to stabilize special commodity prices. Governments pushing up commodity prices by inflating their currencies continue to blame the higher prices on private producers, sellers and profiteers. They impose price ceilings on oil and natural gas to discourage new exploration, precisely when it is in most need of encouragement, or resort to general price and wage fixing or monitoring. They continue rent control in the face of the obvious devastation it has caused. They not only retain minimum wage laws, but keep increasing their level in face of the chronic unemployment they so clearly bring about. They continue to pass laws granting special privileges and immunities to labour unions, to oblige workers to become members, to tolerate mass picketing and other forms of coercion, and to compel employers to bargain collectively in good faith with such unions, i.e., to make at least some concessions to their demands. The intention of all these measures is to help labour, but the result is once more to create and prolong unemployment and to lower total wage payments compared with what they might have been. Most politicians continue to ignore the necessity of profits, to overestimate their average or total net amount, to denounce unusual profits anywhere, to tax them excessively, and sometimes even to deplore the very existence of profits. As to the prices, wages and profit should determine the distribution of that product. The best prices are not the highest prices, but the prices that encourage the largest volume of production and the largest volume of sales. The best wage rates for labour are not the highest wage rates, but the wage rates that permit full production, full employment, and the largest sustained payrolls. The best profits, from the standpoint not only of industry but of labour, are not the lowest profits, but the profits that encourage most people to become employers or to provide more employment than before. If we try to run the economy for the benefit of a single group or class, we shall injure or destroy all groups, including the members of the very class for whose benefit we have been trying to run it. We must run the economy for everybody.